Is it time to finally pull the plug on this season for the Boston Red Sox? More on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is it is all completely free. So you might as well tune in because Locked On is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome to the show. Happy Friday. I think a lot of us could be relieved that it's the end of the work week because of what the Red Sox put us through this week of getting swept by the Mets. Football season officially returned last night. So those of you who are football fans like myself have that to look forward to because the Red Sox have not been giving us much to look forward to as of late, which is really unfortunate because for a while during this season, leading up to the All-Star break, they were playing like a team that had potential, and they were giving us good baseball, and the product on the field was good. They were winning games, and they were giving us hope over here that they could be a playoff team. But since the All-Star break, things have just gone completely downhill for this Boston Red Sox team. They are officially 5.5 games out of a wild card spot right now, and that's a pretty big milestone to jump. They are exactly at 500 at 70-70. The saddest thing about that is that this team was 10 games over 500 at one point in the season. So to go from being 10 games over and looking like you're in a prime position to be a playoff team to then slip back down to being 500 is really unfortunate and takes a lot of deterioration in the game and the way that the team is playing. And that has exactly been the case for this Red Sox team. Offense looks discombobulated and just guys going through the motions, not making an impact, not being able to get the big hit. They grounded into a double play in 3 straight innings in Wednesday night's loss against the Mets, had plenty of opportunities to win that game. And then they went into the bottom of the 8th inning with Kenley Jansen on the mound. And then Rich Hill pitched in that inning. And it was chaotic because the Red Sox could not get out of that inning to save their lives. And then after Rich Hill couldn't figure it out, then they brought in Greg Weissert to try to finish the job. And everything was just a complete train wreck in that bottom of the 8th because none of those 3 pitchers had their command of the strike zone, and they ended up walking 5 batters in that inning, and the Mets scored 4 runs in the inning because it was a 4-3 game going into the bottom of the 8th, and I was hesitant about the Red Sox bringing in Kenley at first to begin with because he's not great in non-save situations. This season, he's had a much higher success rate when he is pitching in a save situation. So I hesitated when it came to Alex Cora's decision to bring him in the bottom of the 8th when the Red Sox were down a run, but he probably wanted to try to keep it a 1-run game to give the offense a chance in the top of the 9th. So I do get that. But I still don't know that Kenley would have been the guy in that situation just because of what his results have shown throughout the course of this season. So I was already questioning that decision. Then he went out there and just completely did not have his command, walked the first guy he faced, and everything fell apart from there. So the Red Sox walked 5 Mets in the inning and handed out free runs. And that's just something you absolutely cannot do if you are trying to win a game. And that game was must win for the Red Sox. They could not go into New York and get swept by the Mets. And that's exactly what happened. They did. And now everybody's left wondering, is this season over for Boston? Is it time to call it quits? Because this team hasn't shown any semblance of being able to go out there and win baseball games. And I really was hoping they would salvage one game in this series against the Mets. Even if they weren't going to win the series, I was like, we need to at least just go out there and take one game from them. And between Tuesday night's game and Wednesday night's game, those were two winnable games where the Red Sox had opportunities to try to take the lead, and they couldn't do it because they couldn't get that big hit in high leverage when there were runners on base. And that caused serious problems for them. And now they're here in this situation, 5.5 games out. Is it time to pull the plug on this season? The answer to that is yes. And here's why. Yes, the Red Sox face the White Sox next for 3 games. Absolutely have to sweep them. The last time they faced the White Sox, they split a 4-game series. So how are we supposed to feel confident that they won't lose 2 of 3 against the White Sox, who absolutely smoked the Orioles on Wednesday night, just not Baltimore's night? So we can't really mark that down as a guaranteed sweep, because with the way the Red Sox are playing right now and squandering offensive opportunities, that could happen against any team. If they don't have the offensive firepower that they've had for a lot of this season, and guys are just going through the motions and not able to come in big in the most important situations offensively, then why would that change against the White Sox? I mean, yes, their pitching is horrid, so I would hope that it changes, but from the standpoint of how they played in their last series against the White Sox and how recent history over the last few years has shown that the Red Sox have struggled head-to-head against the White Sox, I don't feel overly confident that they can do that for sure. I mean, they definitely need to sweep them if they want even the slightest chance, but I'm not confident in that happening. And on the same side of that, even if they were to sweep the White Sox, that would mean the Royals and Twins would also have to be losing. Both of those teams have not been playing well as of late, but the Red Sox haven't been able to gain ground on those teams while they aren't playing well. And that's been a big issue here, because the Red Sox could have taken advantage of gaining ground in the wild card standings, but they couldn't do it because while the Twins and Royals were losing, the Red Sox also simultaneously were not playing well at all. So here we are in this situation where they're relying on having to sweep the White Sox. And even if so, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Royals and Twins are going to keep losing. So the Red Sox might not be able to make up much ground anyway. So that's number one. Number two is that even if they go through the White Sox series and they sweep them, they then have the Orioles and Yankees next. The two teams that are grinding it out for first place in the division right now. And yes, the Red Sox have a winning record against the Yankees head-to-head this year, but they did not look good in their last series against New York. And that was kind of when the wheels started to fall off the bus for this Red Sox team. This is a completely different version of the Red Sox than we've seen earlier in the season when they were playing New York. So how do we know that's going to be the version we're going to get in that series next week? The Orioles are a significantly better team than the Red Sox, so that has the potential to be an absolute nightmare for Boston. And then you're looking further and further down the standings. And then it's 3 games against the Rays and then the Twins, one of the teams that they are watching in the standings and battling it out with for a wild card spot. That's a must-win series too. Have to gain ground on the Twins during that series, but what happens if the Royals keep winning during that time? Ultimately, in summary, it's hard to feel confident that they can salvage this because of the fact that they are now 5.5 games back. That's the biggest thing to me that's screaming, there is no hope for this season anymore for the Boston Red Sox. And if they prove me wrong, I would love that. Obviously, I'd love for the Red Sox to make the playoffs this year. But with the way that they're playing right now and all the inconsistencies they're showing, and the fact that they just have not been able to put everything together all at once, makes me feel like these problems are going to continue. And you take a guy like Rafael Devers, who's playing through an injury right now that he's been dealing with all season long, and he has not been able to click offensively as of late. So there are a lot of effects to this. Lots of guys who just haven't been performing. I mean, Yoshida was red hot after the All-Star break and hasn't been as productive offensively as of late. I mean, you take a guy like Tristan Casas, who's struggled since coming back from his injury to get involved in the offense and make an impact. And you think about players who are supposed to be making an impact and they're just not. The only one who really is fully still is Jarren Duran, and he's been the only consistent hitter that this Red Sox team has had throughout the course of the season that's able to go out there and make a positive contribution. So the White Sox series needs to be a boost, but even if they sweep them, they still feel like they've dug themselves too much of a hole to where they can't get out of it. And I just feel like getting swept by the Mets was what did them in for this season. And I don't really feel like there's any coming back from that. And whose fault is that the Red Sox have had a struggling season again and are in jeopardy of being a team that could finish in last place in their division once again? I'm going to be discussing that next. Are you taking that dream vacation this summer but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all of your purchases, so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. For me, I'm going on my honeymoon in October right after I get married, and I used Ibotta to start getting cash back on things like the hotel, the restaurants that I'm booking, and other excursions that I want to do. It makes a big difference so that you can be cost efficient, but also still get the vacation that you've always craved. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying it by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Ibotta seriously is a great way to save money on nice summer-related things and excursions and activities, so make sure you check it out today. Thank you for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On MLB with Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, who dives deep into what's going on around the league with just his famous sense of humor that truly stands out. And I've had a great time with him when I've recorded crossover shows with him, so you definitely won't be disappointed. So make sure you check out his show right after this, wherever you get your podcasts. It feels like the Boston Red Sox season is over. There's not really much getting around that in regards to feeling like they've dug themselves too deep of a hole at this point to where they can get out of it, because this Red Sox team goes and does things like get swept by the Mets, gets swept by the Astros at home, loses series they shouldn't be losing, splitting a series against the White Sox last time. There are so many little things you can point to from this season and games the Red Sox should have won that they didn't win, series they should have won that they didn't win. And it's infuriating as a fan because I feel like there's talent there, but everything is slowly starting to dwindle and nothing's going the Red Sox way. And Alex Cora has been pretty complacent about it, hasn't really said much different from what he's been saying, which is we're an average baseball team. We're playing 500 baseball. We need to play better. Yeah, we know, dude. We know you have to play better. Like, do something about it. Don't just keep saying we need to play better. Like, obviously, what are you going to do to address the situation and try to fix what's going on with this team? Now, when it comes to who's to blame for what's going on with the Red Sox right now, I'm not going to sit here and dump all the blame on Alex Cora. I don't think that's fair. He's not the one who constructs the roster. The real person to blame right now is John Henry. John Henry is the one who decides where the money goes. He is the owner of the Boston Red Sox. He has so much money in his pocket. And earlier on in his tenure owning this team, he was a lot more willing to break open the wallet and write checks for players that were worth it to have in Boston. I mean, their payroll when they won the World Series in 2004 was insane. 2007, same thing. I mean, even as recent as 2018. That team was so expensive. There were so many players on that roster that cost a lot of money, but the Red Sox didn't shy away from it. They signed the players that needed to be on this team and traded for players that needed to be on this team in order to go off and have one of the best seasons in baseball ever and then win the World Series that they absolutely coasted to. I mean, this Red Sox team has had a very high payroll. And for whatever reason, over the last few seasons, John Henry has changed his outlook on what this team is supposed to be. And to make matters worse, he kind of blamed the fans a few months ago in a recent interview, saying the fans expect championships all the time and they need to realize that it's not a high chance of that happening. Like, yeah, we expect it, dude, because you set that expectation that the Boston Red Sox are a winning organization. And the Red Sox have won 4 World Series championship in the 2000s. So when that happens, you don't expect fans to expect a winning team to be out on the field every year. That logic was insane to me. And also, is it really a crime for us as fans to want to see our team do well? Like, do you think we want to watch a team that's struggling and is coming close to finishing in last place every season? Definitely not. And John Henry is ultimately the person to blame because we saw this happen during Chaim Bloom's tenure, and we're already starting to see it now during Craig Breslow's tenure. He has restricted these people from going out and getting the more expensive players to help round out this team. I mean, Craig Breslow in his first offseason with the team could have gone out and done more with this pitching rotation. Could have gotten more expensive starters, true frontline starters, not somebody like Lucas Giolito, who's been injured all season. Obviously, that's not their fault. But even so, if he was healthy, he's not a number 1 starter. And John Henry obviously wants to invest in the future of this team, which I get, and that's fine. But you have to at least be somewhat invested in the product on the field currently, because you're going to start to lose fans if you're not invested in the product that's on the field currently, and people are going to be less interested in watching your team. And if John Henry is completely X'd out of what's going on the field now because he's focused too much on the future, then what's going to happen is that high-end players who are free agents are not going to want to play in Boston because they're going to see the culture that has been built now and the way that the Red Sox are incapable of being a frontline team that's always in contention because of the way that John Henry has been managing things. And if a free agent wants to go and win a World Series, why would they go to Boston if the product on the field hasn't been good over the last few years? So that's something that going into this offseason, I am a little bit concerned about, is the Red Sox might be ready to invest in a high caliber free agent starting pitcher, but are they really going to want to come here because they don't know and don't feel confident enough that the Red Sox are a winning team? And John Henry is the one who did that. He controls the paychecks. He decides who gets paid and how much. And the problem that I have is that it's restricting somebody like Craig Breslow or Chaim Bloom from being able to do their job to the best ability and capability that they can possibly do it to. And it makes them look like the bad guy because they're the ones who handle the logistics of the business side of things in terms of negotiating trades for players or free agent contracts and trying to handle the players who come onto this roster, and they control the makeup of the roster. But Henry ultimately has to give the all clear for them to go and offer a lot of money to a player in free agency. And the fact that he doesn't want to do that is what's making the product on the field not as good. And it's easy to pin the blame on Alex Cora too, because of his managing and feeling like he's lost the locker room and feeling like that's the reason that this team has failed. But ultimately, the roster is what has caused this Red Sox team to fail. I mean, you look at the list of names on their pitching staff right now, and you can't expect them to go out there and succeed with that pitching staff on a nightly basis. It's really unfortunate, but if your best starter is Tanner Houck and he's been having a bumpy second half, there's a serious problem. If your best relievers are Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen, and Kenley hasn't been super sharp in the second half either, then that's a problem. If you have guys who are completely unreliable on a regular basis, but they're being used anyway because the Red Sox don't have any other options, that's a problem. Ultimately, the biggest person to blame in this situation is John Henry. He's trying to justify it by saying, oh, championships are hard to come by, so therefore fans should be more patient. But patient for what? Are you going to decide to rip out the checkbook and invest in the players who are proven that can help you win a championship? Because I'm not so confident in that happening either. So that is the biggest problem I have with the Boston Red Sox right now, is John Henry's inability to want to go out and spend money on players who are worth it to bring onto this Red Sox team to put them in a better place to succeed. And it's a dangerous game to play because it's investing a lot in prospects and relying on them all panning out. And the majority of the time, not every top prospect pans out when they get to the major league level. So it is playing a bit of a dangerous game in that John Henry hopes that the key players that they have in the system right now who are eventually going to come up are going to be the guys who are going to contribute and formulate the future of this organization. But what happens if they're not all living up to the expectations that John Henry and company have for them? Then they're kind of back at square one with having to basically rebuild a team. So I do like investing in the future and focusing on the young talent you have, but you also need to find a balance between doing that and investing in the current team on the field. And I do feel badly for Alex Cora because he just doesn't have a whole lot to work with from a pitching standpoint. And I think this team that we're seeing now is more the team that they are. And that couple months leading up to the All-Star break, they were just crazy hot and just playing really good baseball. But I don't think that's the team that they are. This team here that's been struggling since the All-Star break, that reveals a lot of holes in this roster, I think ultimately at the end of the day is what they are, because I was worried about the roster construction going into the season, and I'm still worried about it now. And it was nice to get a semblance of hope there because of who was on this team and feeling like maybe they would surprise people because they were playing well for a period of time during the season. But the reality at the end of the day is that this is who they are. And I don't see this team being a team that will go far unless they do some serious things to fix it in the offseason. So blame John Henry, number one, for your problems with this team. He ultimately needs to change his mindset on how this team is going to be run, not try to cheap out and actually go out and be willing to spend money on players who are worth it. That is how the Red Sox are going to win and find more success moving forward in the future. And he shouldn't be blaming fans for their desire to want to watch a winning team. Even though this season might be over for the Boston Red Sox, why is it still worth watching for the remainder of the season? I'll tell you that next. If you're looking for a fun way to play daily fantasy sports, PrizePicks is exactly the place for you, which is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks, your picks are still live. They ensure that for you. All you have to do to enjoy all these perks is download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. PrizePicks can become very addicting if you start to win lots of money, but hey, it could change your life. So don't wait another second. Check it out today. In talking about the Boston Red Sox and the season that they are having, it does not look very promising for them to be able to go out on a high note to finish off this season and make the wild card race more competitive at this point. With only around 20 games left in the season, they are running out of opportunities. And being 5.5 games back right now out of that third wild card spot, that's a ton of ground to make up. And that basically means they'd have to win pretty much every game moving forward. And the Royals would have to start losing a lot of games and going on some serious losing streaks. So there's definitely a lot of luck that would be involved if the Red Sox do find a way to make it, which they won't. This season is officially over. I think it's safe to call it quits on the wild card race right now. But why is it still worth your time watching this team for the last month or so? Because now we're at the point in the season where the Red Sox can start to experiment a little bit more with the future. Players who are going to be part of the core moving forward that they can rely on a daily basis to contribute and make a difference, whether that's offensively, defensively, as a pitcher. They're going to start to formulate next year's roster and figure out players who are part of that puzzle. Like, obviously, Devers is the root of it because he has that big contract extension and he's the face of the franchise now. So naturally they're going to build around him. But you have guys like Jarren Duran, who's super talented, who could get his opportunity. Maybe this is a good chance to continue to play Enmanuel Valdez as these last few weeks of the season progress, to see where he's at and see if he could be a key contributor down the road for this team, or if he's somebody that's more meant for AAA or getting traded. And also the benefit to that and allowing him to play more for the next few weeks is that his trade value could increase and he could be roped into a trade with somebody else to try to get some pitching in return in the offseason. So that's a very good thing to look out for, is while the Red Sox are evaluating these players to see who's going to be part of the future, they can also work on landing trading spots for some of these guys so that they can get high-end pitching to come back to this team. And as much as it's frustrating watching a team that has been struggling on the field, we can take solace in the fact that there's such a bright future for this team. And watching guys like Jarren Duran and Tristan Casas and maybe Brian Bayo, who has shown a little bit of growth in the second half this year, which is good, and guys who are currently on the roster that are young and continuing to develop. I'd even throw David Hamilton into that category. Doesn't have the best defense, but has the speed to make an impact in any given situation and can help put lots of pressure on opposing pitchers. So that's a skill that is valuable for him to have. And, maybe they just continue to swap guys in the bullpen and see who has it, and maybe give guys like Chase Sugart more opportunities to throw out of the pen because he hasn't had much time in the majors yet. So maybe this is the time for him to showcase what he can do to see if he's going to be part of the future. So at the end of the day, there are a lot of exciting things that you could watch for. Like, if you see a player who's surprising you in a good way, you could say, well, I'm really excited to watch him play next year because I know he'll make a big impact. And if you watch this team more for the young players who are going to be part of the Red Sox core in the future, it'll help you start to picture that future of, oh, wow, we have a ton of talent on this team. So this team is going to be the real deal come 2025 and beyond. And having that mindset of watching young talent that the Red Sox have worked so hard over the last few years to get into their farm system to eventually get called up to the major league organization is huge for this Red Sox team. So when you're watching the rest of these games for the rest of September, even if the Red Sox are significantly struggling, the wheels are falling off the bus and they just are not able to click, and they don't make it into the postseason party, over these next few weeks, try to focus on the young talent and get yourself excited for what's to come. Cedar Rafaela, who's been significantly slumping offensively, is another good one, because what if he's just in a slump and he turns things around and has a really good September to the point where we can be excited about him next year? His defense, we know we can be excited about, but what if his offense starts to turn things around and we know that that's something we can be excited about moving forward? So in essence, I am saying, when you're watching these games in the next few weeks, think less about the wild card standings, because at this point, it's likely toast anyway for the Red Sox. And just watch it more for the guys who are young and are up and coming on this Red Sox team, and think about it as a way for them to showcase what they have, and almost like they're trying to show that they deserve a spot on this team next year. And if you see things you like about some of these young players, know that that will be incorporated to the team next year, because this is the future of the Boston Red Sox. And when you see the way that some of these young guys play and the attitude they have, wanting to win all the time, and just really how upset they get when they lose, that's a good vibe to have in the clubhouse. And I'm sure Cora will give some of these guys an opportunity, especially if they continue to lose games here down the stretch. Might as well experiment for next year. But I've talked a lot on this show about how bright the Red Sox future is, and it really is, because then you get into that next core of players in Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal, Christian Campbell, and Marcelo Meyer, who eventually will get called up to the majors and contribute for the Red Sox as well. So when you add all of that together, if you're watching the young talent on your screen right now, you can think about next year and the potential that this team has next year once they weed out a lot of the players who aren't cutting it. And when it comes to the bullpen revamp, they absolutely need to just reevaluate the entire bullpen situation, get some guys out who are just not cutting it here, and allow themselves to be put in the best position possible to succeed. So you can think about who you might want them to keep in the bullpen. Guys who are really killing it this year, like Justin Slayton is the biggest name that pops into my head as somebody out of this Red Sox bullpen who's definitely worth keeping around because he was so reliable all season long. But you can think about guys like Josh Winkowski and Zach Kelly, maybe Greg Weiser, guys who have been struggling this year that you might not want in this bullpen next year. And the shining light in all of this is that I'm sure the Red Sox also recognize it, that some of these guys are not cutting it, so they can weed out those guys in the offseason and help formulate and field a really competitive team for 2025. So please, I encourage you to continue to watch the games. If not for the standings for this year, at least for the farm system and the talented young players that have come through that the Red Sox are showcasing right now, because I think there's something really special here coming in the next couple of years, and you don't want to blink an eye and miss it. You want to make sure you're along for the ride. So continue to watch the games, at least until the season is over, because you never know. I mean, they could go on some big winning streak to end the season and make the playoffs, and I could be completely wrong. Not that I'm seeing that happen, but lots of young talent to watch out for on this team. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they're able to go out there and field a really exciting team for 2025. Like I always say to end this show, make sure that you're keeping the faith. They need you as a fan to do that. Don't forget to check out Locked On MLB after this on any podcast platform. Go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.